Hello, hello. I am Ben Pick, and thank you for joining me in Running to Write, where I normally give questionable writing advice through running metaphors, but have since switched to the platform of productivity sprints. If I look a little wet, it's because I am. I was just outside for my afternoon walk and got a little rained on, so that is always fun. As always, thank you everybody for joining in. Richard, hello, hello. Yes, this was a fun weekend. I was up at Columbia for Peter Chang's. The food there was excellent. So now I've been to two of their locations and it's been wonderful. So I had dinner with my parents over there, which was pretty cool because it's right next to the Columbia Mall. And for those of you who read my second novel, that was a scene in the story where a fun action moment took place there. So I can actually go inside. I mean, it's down the street a ways. It's closer to Meriwether Post Pavilion. They got this nice little outdoor eating area, which is really building up. There's an apartment complex, which is, I mean, it's all new relative to me, who hasn't been there in a decade, but they have a Peter Chang's there. They have a Game On, which is a barcade. They have a bunch of other really nice restaurants. They have a matcha ice cream. They have a regular ice cream place, which I didn't go to. One, because I was very full from dinner, and two, because the line was basically out the door. So I didn't feel like waiting there and then driving home an hour. But Peter Chang's was fantastic because I actually got to sit in and dine in. Usually I just take their food to go because I'm a ways away. And so I got to eat some of their clay pot meals, which is some of my favorite things, which I don't usually eat when I take their food to go. If anybody's in the area, they have this wonderful clay pot. The location in Falls Church, the location in Columbia doesn't have this, but they still have a really good what was it? It was a beef brisket stew in a clay pot with tomatoes in there. It was really flavorful, really delicious, really tender. Highly recommend if you're in Columbia. If you're in the Falls Church location, they had, I don't know if they still do, but it's the same sort of thing. It's just, I forget what it's called, but it's like lamb inside their clay pot. Again, absolutely fantastic, absolutely delicious. But then they have the regular staples, which I get every time. There's the pork bellies, which are incredible. Adriana drives 30 minutes one way just to get there and back. Well, sorry, she'll drive an hour total, 30 minutes one way, more or less, assuming there's no traffic. And between that and grandma's noodles, it's pretty good. So this has been a just random tangent with the food-ins of the weekend. But she also cooked me a lovely steak this weekend. So got to enjoy that too. It was perfectly cooked, along with potatoes, string beans, everything. And a couple of good news. Well, not good news, but we watched the OG New Hope Star Wars. And between that and finishing The Last Command, which is the third in the Timothy Zahn Thrawn trilogy, which is what 7, 8, and 9 should have been, I kind of have renewed hope in Star Wars. Not in anything modern, mind you, but in Star Wars in general, because I really don't like anything that's come from Star Wars in the past decade. I know there's Mandalorian, which went downhill quickly, and Andor, and I go on a big tangent with J.M. Chaley, Jamie Close, and who is it? And Eloise was the host. So if you're around for the Authortube writing conference, that whole conversation will be there. So that's a plug, I think, for this coming weekend. Let me find out. I believe it's this weekend. It should be this weekend. Nope, 2 weekends away. I'm bad with math. So Friday, June 27th from 3 to 9 p.m., Saturday, June 28th from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m., and June 29th, Sunday, June 29th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. All that is in Eastern Daylight Time. And for schedules, let me see if I can find out where I am. Let's see here. Eloise? Yep, Eloise. So it's a recorded session from 7 to 8 p.m. on, looks like, Friday. Cool. So that's when we're talking all about what it takes to make sequels and reboots and spin-offs, all from the view of Star Wars, where I was exceptionally negative because a lot of the modern things don't necessarily work. even when Mandalorian was new and fresh and it was supposed to be Wolf and Cub, it still wasn't that great because you could see the Disney fingerprints all over it. Thank you, Richard, for mentioning Doctor Who with Disney, because that has gone way downhill too, thanks to, I will say, exclusively Disney. But with Mandalorian, they basically had Baby Yoda, who was blatantly a walking product placement. Like, you could see the merchandising coming oozing right off of that CGI and or puppet, because they use them interchangeably. And like within, there was this one like screenshot that they took of him where he was like holding a cup or something, and or maybe he wasn't even holding a cup, but they superimposed a cup in there and then they superimposed steam on there, and it was just the most meme thing on the internet for a day. And I was like, wow, that looks like 100% somebody in Disney made that and then spread it around and boosted it and whatnot. So yeah, everything about Mandalorian feels manufactured and fake, even though the episodes themselves were pretty good for the first 2 seasons. Whew, that's a lot. But yeah, at this point in Star Wars, it needs to prove itself that it's worthy. Otherwise, I'm not going to watch it. So I skipped Acolyte. I have no interest in watching the movies that are coming out. Even the Rogue Squadron movie, which looks somewhat interesting because I am really curious about what they're doing with that, and they could do a lot of potential. And I think that one might have been canceled. There's, I know there were a couple of movies that were coming out. There was the Mandalorian movie. Anyways, I don't want to necessarily be too negative. My point was that The Last Command was fantastic. It was incredible. It was everything I wanted from Star Wars. Not only was it an incredible story, but it actually did nostalgia right. So it was like, hey, this is just like the Battle at Endor, and they were making all these comparisons, but it's not, just punching us in the face with references, or it's not like, hey, remember the Millennium Falcon? Well, it's awesome because we're in the Millennium Falcon now. It's like, hey, there's been some buildup, and if you catch the hints and the foreshadowing that's coming, you'll know, like, this kind of feels like what happened before. And then when they actually get there, they're like, by the way, this kind of feels like what happened before, but they don't hang on that moment. It's just like a pass by reference. So it's really cool and incredible how well Timothy Zahn wrote Star Wars, and how much I wish that was canon, because it was just such incredible, incredible storytelling. And yeah, so let me see, Richard. Let's see here. At least I remember my birthday with Doctor Who. Yeah, I think there's been one interesting Doctor Who story since Disney took over, and there's just been incredibly atrocious ones. The Space Babies ones we've commented on here all the time. The 63 Yards episode was just a waste of television because the characters didn't really remember it, and there was some throwaway line later that feels like a worthwhile reference. But if the characters don't remember the moments, 63 Yards was a Doctor Who episode where they did a time loop, except that the characters forgot what they did during the time loop to change time, and they went back. And so the point is that none of the characters, even the Doctor, remember what happened during the time loop. They changed the events so that the events that we watched didn't actually happen. So there was really no point in watching that. And yes, later on, there's some specific importance with 63 Yards. But again, it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. So you just wait. Like, that episode was actually a waste to watch. If you are interested in watching any modern Doctor Who, skip 63 Yards. Also, I would suggest skipping Space Babies because that was abysmal as far as all things are concerned. And sorry, good Doctor Who. I did enjoy the episode where they're stuck in a barbershop. It's a very self-contained episode. It has to do with African gods. It was actually pretty cool. It was actually compelling, and they got to do great acting. There were legitimate stakes in the episode. There was fun banter. There was a great all-around episode. And then there's just so much garbage along with it. And there was an episode in there that didn't have to do with the Doctor, and it's yeah. I think I'm the one who told you about I think I'm the one who told you about the barbershop episode, because you, Richard, you are a lifelong Doctor Who fan. I'm more of a new Who fan. I guess I picked it up well after graduating, probably around 20. I think I was dating Adriana, so probably 2012. And Yeah, I picked it up in the episode with River Song. It was actually a really fun episode where she travels back to the Germany during the 1940s to kill a very famous dictator. And that was a surprisingly fun episode. And then I sort of went back and started watching from the beginning. And then I caught all the wonderful episodes like Blink, which is everybody's go-to. So much so that it's basically just me, because that is a perfect standalone episode for everything that's Doctor Who and everything that's amazing in Doctor Who. But yeah, Richard, I'm very sorry that after, in your case, loving Doctor Who for 30 years, essentially, you have just utterly given up on it. And that's fine. That's your decision. You know, shows don't owe us anything. But oh, well, I mean, look. I don't know. I think that's kind of cool. If you're given a platform, if you have an interesting idea and you just adapt it into a show that you love, like that could be pretty cool. Um, yeah. I don't know. As long as the play is interesting, look, I've never seen the play. All I can say is that episode was great. And it shines brightly in 2 full seasons at least of just utter garbage. Yeah. Yeah. I haven't seen the final 2 episodes of what will be, at least for now, the series finale, because my understanding is that after, well, this is Disney's problem. And I feel like I'm going to steal my thunder for what I say during AWC, but they're like Amazon and Google, where they just buy the competition. If they can't meet a product, or it from a business standpoint, it is better to buy somebody who does something better than you and incorporate it in, or in this case, allow it to tank, than it is to compete against them. So what Disney did was, yeah, possibly the final episodes ever. Yes, that's my understanding. Is that Disney has utterly tanked BBC to the point where nobody's watching it anymore, and whether that was intentional or not, I can't honestly say. It feels like they just bought the competition and then just didn't care about it. So, I don't know anything behind the scenes, but whether they intentionally let it just, where they didn't devote enough money and time to it, so what we got was just utter garbage, or if they intentionally behind the scenes tanked it, we may never know. But yeah. And for what's worth, the same thing happened in the 90s, I feel like, where it took a 10-year hiatus and then came back incredibly strong with David Eccleston. David Eccleston? Eccleston. Definitely Eccleston. Pete, I don't remember. So last name Eccleston. He came back and was really fun. And he was only there for 1 season because that was what he wanted. Okay, so I was close. 1989, and then came back in 2005. Yeah, came back in 2005 with Eccleston. And that was really strong storytelling. It was, sure, there were some episodes where all the aliens do is fart, but at the same time, there were some really compelling episodes. And the Bad Wolf plot line was held off for a very long time and then carried out even after we had ultimately discovered what it was, Bad Wolf. And then there were all these other like multi-season long arcs that were just really interesting breadcrumbs, and was just a nerd's paradise because the stories were great. The acting was fantastic. You go from Eccleston to David Tennant, who just was born to play this role. So much so that when ratings are starting to fail, they brought him out of retirement to try and fix all the problems. Well, so here's the thing, like, it's 20 years later. I mean, I have some ideas, but I have some fantastic ideas, some great ideas, some really interesting stuff, but that well dries up. And after a certain point, it feels like you are phoning it in, or I've got a long way to go before I hit that point, but I can imagine if I were still writing, first off, if I were still writing this season 20 years, um, I feel like the well would have already dried up. which is unfair to say because I'm actually at 20 plus years because it takes me a very long time to write. But if I'm still writing these 20 years from now, my point being that I plan to have this series behind me only be 6 books. And maybe a seventh one I could stretch it into, but I'm going beyond that. Like, I have nothing worth saying at that point. I feel like I can say everything I need or want to within 6 books, possibly a seventh, as kind of like a coda or, taking a bow or victory lap or whatever. But yeah. Oh, absolutely not. I'm almost 40. That's 2 years away. I'll be lucky to start. Well, I'll get book 4 out maybe by 39. There's no way in hell I'm getting book 5 out. Now, I probably won't. I will not even be done with the first draft of book 5 by the time I turn 40. I can guarantee you that much. And yeah, it feels like the writers of Doctor Who were taking unearned bows because there was a point where they broke the fourth wall and the Doctor actually comes out into the real world where he's hanging out with fans in an episode of Doctor who are commenting on the meta within the episode itself. And they say the exact same thing that I said, which is, oh, everybody loves Blink because everybody does love Blink because it's such a fantastic standalone episode where you don't need to know any of the backstory, you don't need to know any of the weight. And it was insulting. It was insulting as a fan of Doctor Who to have that scene take place. That's the best way I can put it. But anyways, we aren't here to discuss failing media such as Star Wars and Doctor Who. We're here to be productive. So with that in mind, I'm going to pull an audible and we are going to start with a 20-minute sprint. We'll see, we might be able to get in 3, but probably only 2 because I love to talk. It has been a fun weekend and I'm full of all the thoughts, all the voices, all the things to say. So I think I'll watch the show while wearing cosplay. Yes. I can understand that. I went to the 50th anniversary in the theater, which is a fantastic experience. I keep saying fantastic. It was a wonderfully memorable experience. I went there with one of my good friends from college, and we had a whole lot of fun. I don't think we dressed up. Oh, boy. Okay, we didn't dress up, but I know there were people who did dress up, and that was kind of like a momentous moment. It was 50 years in the making, so it makes sense that people would dress up for it. It's like people dressing up for Star Wars and whatnot. If people are dressing up for your day-to-day episodes, just random during the week, yeah, I question some of the things. Also, fun story about that friend. We have a very bad. I mean, Doctor Who obviously worked out well, but we were commenting how we went to like this momentous, a similar moment where we went to go see Avatar: The Last Airbender, and both of us loved that series. We watched it together, and that was one of my most heartbreaking and disappointing movie moments. I just walked out of there thinking, wow, I wasted my time. I wasted my money. I mean, I'm glad that I was able to share this miserable experience with a friend, but it wasn't even like painfully bad, or it wasn't so bad it was good. It was just painfully bad. It was like Timeline, the movie, which again, I tell this story all the time, but I was in high school and I was like, they're making a Timeline movie. I was so excited because that was like my first real book to movie moment. I mean, yeah, sure, there were some others in there, but like that was a book that I knew and I just enjoyed and I thought was such an incredible thing to see on the live screen. And what we got was not Timeline. I will blatantly state that. I don't think Michael Crichton had anything to do with that movie. I think he just, allowed the money dump truck to stop off in his front yard and make a donation. But hey, and I don't fault Michael Crichton for that because a lot of these movie deals and whatnot are out of their control. And honestly, like I keep saying, Netflix, if you want to give me, I don't know, I probably set a bar really low. I probably set it for $50,000 for you to take a live adaptation of my books and make them utterly abysmal. Have at it, But yeah, that's all I got to say on that. So, with that in mind, I'm working on chapter 37. I finished the chapter I was working on last time. I'm definitely not going to finish, definitely not going to finish this chapter. So, we have that to work on, and I will see you all on the other side of 20 minutes. I'm going to actually shut up now. So, see you now. See you in 20 minutes, and take care. Yeah. Thanks, Austin, for joining in. I'll see you guys in 20 minutes, or see you everyone in 20 minutes. And welcome back, everyone. Thank you for joining me for the first of hopefully 3 sprints tonight. I know I keep saying I'll try and do better, but yeah, I am very bad about keeping my schedule. So I wrote 409 words, and this chapter is starting off strong. I'm currently working on the ending to my 4th novel. We still have a long ways left to go, hopefully, maybe 9,000 words, but I am steadily making it there. And let's see, JC Carpenter, I'm sorry that you feel ignored. I was speaking generally when I was talking about everybody here, and I said, guys, yes, I meant people, and I am very glad that you are here tonight. Oh. Well, we were just sharing our love-hate relationship. Richard and I were just sharing a love-hate relationship with all things new, Star Wars, Doctor Who, insert ruining franchise here. What else am I slowly going through? Oh, The Last of Us 2. I haven't actually started yet. I thought The Last of Us 1 worked out pretty well as a show, but from what I heard, the second season kind of jumps the shark. And there's a whole bunch of yeah, I also finished up with Dragon Prince. Yeah. And yes, exactly. Amos Blogger. Sorry, as I mentioned, I am working on the ending to my 4th novel in my ongoing series. It's roughly urban fantasy. Now we've definitely crossed over into kind of sci-fi, but that barrier is very fluid. And I'm glad you're working on an outline for your combination paranormal. Ooh, your fiction, fantasy, and contemporary paranormal romance. That is quite a bit. Good luck with that. I know some things about writing fantasy and less so contemporary, I guess, and definitely almost nothing about paranormal romance. That's not to say I don't enjoy those genres. That's to say that I know nothing. I don't know enough about them to feel comfortable writing those genres. I will happily read those stories, but I don't feel like I could tell a good enough story myself to warrant me wanting to write in those genres. Just personal preference, but more power to you. Yeah. Yeah. Adriana's keeping a list of all the shows that we need to watch, and I'm very frequently just kind of checking in because the list keeps growing, but at the same time, I am comfortable just not watching certain things. And so whenever she's like, oh, well, we got this on the list, so we can watch this instead and we can watch this after. And I'm like, well, do we have to, though? I think I said that with The Last of Us 2. And eventually, at some point, we'll catch up with everything and we'll run out of things to watch. So that will be good to go in there. But oh man, we are on the darkest timeline right now because like Andor feels very depressing to watch. Doctor Who doesn't feel enjoyable, so it's kind of depressing to watch. The Last of Us is grim dark, and everything is just a slog to get through because it is entertaining enough to watch while we eat, but it is like the world is ending and everything's awful, and just we're surrounded by terrible people doing terrible things, and there's no hope. And well, yeah, Pedro Pascal is the go-to guy. Who was it? It was Chris Star-Lord. Star-Lord Chris. Not Hemsworth, not Evans. Chris Pratt. Chris Pratt was the go-to guy for a while, and then he wasn't for public religious reasons. I don't know. I don't really think that anybody should be the it person. Like, yeah, thank you, Chris Pratt. Yeah, I got there eventually. I don't think that anybody should be an it celebrity for whatever insert movie, TV show here, because a lot of times they feel wrong in it is the best thing I can say. Like, sure, Chris Pratt did some fantastic work to go from Andy in Parks and Recreation to Star-Lord, But then it feels like the Star-Lord personality just kind of took over, where now he's kind of feels like a jerk in all of his movies. So I don't know. And I feel like if you have just insert famous person here and just sort of cut and paste them into a movie and then into a different movie and then into a different show, like you don't really have a good enough premise to stand on its own. You have just carbon copy. You're just taking the same scenarios and just carbon copying them in different places and maybe changing the background a little bit. Yeah, I'm okay with that statement. Because like Star-Lord is the same thing in that movie. He was the same thing in that movie with where he was one of the last humans alive. I didn't actually see it, but I watched the previews and I had no interest in watching it. Uh, yeah, please do. Yes, reboots and reiterations of classics. This is one of my big pet peeves, and I have talked about this before. I 100% agree with you, JC. I think that a reboot and reiteration should only be made if they did a bad job the first time around. So the perfect idealized version would be the Black Cauldron. Disney's The Black Cauldron. They did the Chronicles of Prydain, which is somewhere on the shelf. They did it really badly, and it is such a quintessential coming of age story in a fantasy world, which could be done in a way where it is completely different than Tolkien, C.S. Lewis, and so many of these other fantasy stories. I guess it would kind of be like Legends of the Seeker, or be completely. It could feel like Percy Jackson, but just wholly consumed in a fantasy world instead of being Percy Jackson, which is a fantasy world in the modern day. It could actually be like Percy Jackson, just not where it belongs, but like what Percy Jackson is kind of giving flavors of. So I would absolutely love a Black Cauldron to be remade. What I don't need is another Lion King or another Lilo and Stitch, because from everything I heard about Lilo and Stitch, it is a lifeless iteration of what was a incredible movie. Let's see here. Just found out that Netflix is doing an iteration of Little House on the Prairie. Yeah. Not only is that a classic, but there's I mean, when you have the IP, you have the IP, and if you have the IP, you're going to constantly redo it multiple times. But yeah, we do have quite a few Little Women iterations, and again, there's nothing wrong with it per se. I do think if you're, you should wait at least like a generation to roll through. So if you want to do a Count of Monte Cristo every 20 years, sure. Romeo and Juliet, sure. At least 20. Like there should be a minimum waiting period, unless you screw it up. If you do a bad iteration and you think like, hey, 10 years from now we can redo it, go for it. Spider-Man, the Andrew Garfield reboots were far too soon, and the only reason why the Tom Holland ones weren't too soon is because they were actually done incredibly well. But now I'm glad that they're I know it's going to be hypocritical, because there is a new Spider-Man, like between 1990 and now there's at least 10 different, easily, we're probably up to 15 different iterations of Spider-Man across all mediums. Not all mediums, just TV and movies. So we have the what's his name? Before Andrew Garfield, Tobey Maguire. There we go. Tobey Maguire, then they burnt out by episode 3, and so they had to redo it 3 years later to maintain the rights. And then they had Andrew Garfield, and they burned that out almost immediately, but they still somehow came up with the second one because I guess people wanted Spider-Man enough. So then they came out with Tom Holland 3 to 5 years later. So within like a 15-year period, we had 5, 6 yeah, we had 6 different Spider-Man movies, 3 different well, 2 different complete reboots of it, and 3 different origin stories for a hero we already knew. Whew. And along that time, we still have the OG Spider-Man from 1990, which is surprisingly holds up very well today. I do eventually want to go back and completely rewatch it because that was fantastic. Gotta stop saying fantastic because that was compelling storytelling that was told in a very well written way. Then we had the immediate reboot, which was supposed to be kind of a continuation where it was Spider Man Unlimited. And then you have Extreme Spider Man, Ultimate Spider Man. You have the new Netflix Spider Man, which just came out, which was good until the entire thing was a time loop, which is a paradoxical time loop, which is by far the worst because that's not what Spider-Man needs. But at the same time, I feel like they just couldn't write a good enough story, or there was something missing, so they just decided to do a time loop for no apparent reason, other than to just have a few quick answers. Yes. The only problem is that people don't go see original content. So there are plenty of movies out there that just seem original, and I have no interest in seeing any of them. I know Adriana went to go see, I keep pointing up because I'm in the basement and she's upstairs making dinner. Adriana went to go see Sinners with one of her friends. I couldn't make it out that night. Also, it was kind of a girls' night, so I wouldn't have gone anyways. But I also don't really go to the movies anymore. So when that comes out, I'll definitely watch it on whatever, Netflix or whatever, wherever it ends up. I did enjoy the Barbie movie, which kind of was all right, except the whole thing where it feels like just a walking advertisement. Yeah. I don't know. There's a couple of movies that look pretty good that I just don't really want to see in theaters, but will happily watch at home. And I know, well, yeah. And then there's just a lot of movies that I'm very glad that I'm not actually seeing in theaters, like the Minecraft movie. And that makes complete sense. Yeah. Richard, you're part of the problem. The Final Destination, the finalist destination. What are they up to now? 6 or 7 of them. There was just a Halloween. I don't even know what came out recently. Yeah, Chicken Jockey. I will eventually see Sinners. It is actually in my list of shows to watch when I'm working out or doing whatever. So I will get around to it. I was just about to do something. Final Destination. There we go. And then there were Final Destination, whatever we're up to now, is just like Jason X, where they kind of just gave up and said, "Oh well, whatever. Jason's in space now." So there is that. Oh. Yeah, but I don't care about the experience. The last thing I want to do is watch a movie with other people in there. In fact, well, yeah, but I don't have time to watch movies unless I'm doing it while working out. And to be fair, I do give my full attention to the movies when I'm working out and doing it. So there's that. Oh boy. The movie theaters by me are rarely silent. Well, unless they're empty. I guess the past couple, well, the only times I've been in the theater has been for Godzilla 2000 and then for Godzilla Year One, both of which I went to go see with my best friend. So those were fun things. Yeah, but if I'm sitting silent in a dark room, I'm going to fall asleep. So as much as I love Star Wars, I passed out just as they were starting to do the trench run on Friday night because when the lights go out, my brain just shuts off after, say, an hour and a half. And yeah, I know that's awful to admit, but it was also at that point, I think 10:15, and I was just done. That would actually be really cool. Yeah, yeah. I am continually pushing myself past the point of anything. So I don't know. You know what? I feel like we have 30 minutes left. I'm going to do a full 30-minute sprint. So to make up for the fact that I just did 20 minutes and that we're only doing 2 of these, we are going to do 30 minutes. So I will see you all on the other side of 30 minutes, and hopefully we get in some good writing. All right, and welcome back, everyone. So thank you for joining me for the second sprint of tonight. And I have written, what was it, 409 words in the first one. Oh boy. Let's see here. Yep, 409 words for the first part, and we are now up to 768. So just shy of 800 words, which isn't the worst. I did do moving some things around, moving some notes for this chapter into the next one. So hopefully this will be maybe a 2,000 word chapter, which means that I'm not going to finish it between now and next week, but hopefully by next week and then maybe a little session after that, I can finish it. So that being said, thank you everyone for joining in, and Coffee Create Connect, thank you for coming in. Let's see. So it looks like you were doing some beta reading. And you got to work outside, which is nice. I am doing all right. We spent a lot of time tonight venting about our disappointing shows, of which I am about to watch one as I go eat dinner. So I hope you all. Oh, and of course, yes, Richard, your words in chat do count as rain words. I hope you all have a wonderful Monday night, and I will see you all next Monday, 6 p.m. Eastern time. And then we can prep for the AWC together, because that's going to be a really cool showing. Whew. Yeah, JC Carpenter, thank you for stopping by, and it was great to see you. And I also wish you I hope you have a good night. There we go. I wish you a good night. There, one of those. I'm going to go eat dinner, and have a wonderful night, everyone. Take care. Thank you for sticking around through the productivity sprints. Thank you for being here for all of our lovely, lovely venting about reboots as kind of a prequel to my more in-depth previously recorded conversation with Eloise and Jam Chelly, which will be airing on the Friday of AWC. So I hope to see you all there. Have a wonderful night, and see you next week.